Hi. I started this channel at almost 80 because I've survived. I've survived a lot of things. My biggest concern since 1962 has been the survival of the earth. But that hasn't been something that everybody's gotten on board with. So I want to talk to you about a lot of other ways of single parenthood. Oh man, I've got so many years experience in that. And obviously I have years experience in homesteading. If you look around, you see this is my farm that I rent here in Ecuador. Those are my chickens over there. So I know about homesteading. Years of experience in that. I was born on a farm in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. I know about surviving mental and emotional and physical illness. I have a doctorate and PhD in special education, bilingual education, and sociocultural studies. So I know about people in different cultures, different lands. I've been in every state in the United States except Hawaii. I've lived or visited most of Canada, most of Mexico, some of Europe, some of Central and South America. So surviving in an environment that isn't your homeland, I certainly have that experience. I think surviving single parenthood is one of the hardest ones, and well, maybe not. You know, surviving a bad marriage, boy, I got to tell you. But I had practice. I had to survive a toxic mother. And that's been a funny thing, because I look back and I think about her childhood, and I'm filled with empathy. But when I think about how she treated me, I'm filled with horror. So I think one of the things I've learned, and especially learned in all the years of being a volunteer, that's why I'm called Dr. Universe. It's an award for someone who has a doctorate, who's also volunteered countless hours of their time. And I've been doing it since I was in high school. I've been a volunteer, so that was never an issue. Oh, yes, let me show you my shirt. This is my heart. I've learned how to survive my own mental illness and emotional illness through crocheting. I really like to crochet. Crocheting, I do what is called freeform, which means no pattern. You just sort of express yourself, sort of like when you're gardening and you're wondering what the plant's going to look like when it comes up. It's kind of a crapshoot. But it really helps. Boy, I tell you, I call it active meditation. I've done a lot of meditation. I've worked at the First Institute of America for years. And I've done a lot of online meditation too. I think the most satisfying thing is what I do right now, which is what prompted me to think, wow, I should go on YouTube and reach more people. I reach about 25, 35 people every weekend, 3 times, with a course, a free course or free opportunity called Life Ring. And it's for people who, for me, I work with trauma. Trauma is usually a co-occurring disorder with either drug or alcohol or some other addiction or dependency. It could be gambling, it might be overeating. There's just so many other inappropriate sexual expression. You know, there's just so many things. I have about 40 years of pastoral counseling. I'm a earth-centered minister. I was ordained in 91. Actually, the whole reason I decided to get on here is because I was supposed to have been dead by 1997. And once I figured that out, I kind of lived the rest of my life anticipating that. And it's kind of left me in a funny position, because here I am in retirement, and I didn't know, I never really made any plans for retirement. Why would I? I had rheumatic fever when I was a kid. For 4 years I suffered with rheumatic fever, which is supposed to be dead by 35. 25% of the people make it to 50, but you know, you kind of look at the short end when you're trying to figure your own self out. I also, both my mother and my grandmother had breast cancer. I have complex PTSD. My mom was an alcoholic and very abusive, extremely abusive. I was an only child, and that was weird because we traveled all over in military orders, and I was always a new kid and taller than everybody. Mom was 6'1", so I was taller than most kids. And just the idea of always being the new kid, the one with funny names, Zaleski, I'm Polish and Scottish. That was kind of goofy. You know, you were always a new kid and the tall kid, and I was in gifted classes, so that was unusual, and I was a girl. And that's always been unusual back in the 50s. And the 50s was a funny time. That's another survival thing I could talk about. How do you survive? We had bomb shelters. Everything was bomb shelters, and everyone was talking about building bomb shelters. And then there was polio. Besides the rheumatic fever epidemic, there was polio epidemic, and I made it through that. Some of my friends didn't, but I made it through the polio epidemic. Let's see, I was a babysitter for 5 kids under 5 by the time I was 12, and I think that's part of the reason I went into special ed. Gosh, I really love working with kids with disabilities. I had a son. I was raped when I was 15, and so I had my first child at 15. And I can talk about that. Talk about how do you recover from being raped? What kind of a lasting effect does that have on you? What kind of a lasting effect does it have? Looking for a home, trying to find a place to live, especially as many times as I've done that. I've done the homeless thing, I've done the live with friends thing, I've done the live in attics, I've done the live in foreign countries, all those kinds of different opportunities to learn. Because everything that's presented to you as a negative experience usually is nothing more than a learning experience in the long run. It's fun to laugh about it afterwards, because actually you're always learning. That's what we do. We learn, unless we want to keep our head in the sand. And then, of course, we don't learn. And anything about gardening, baby raising, animal raising, I'm really big on dogs. I love cats too. I have a cat, but really big on dogs. I've raised several service dogs. I could talk about that. Anything about disabilities, of course, I've had a lot of experience in that. Waited tables for 23 years. I usually had 2 or 3 jobs, so that was one of them. When you're a single parent, you do whatever you have to do. And teenagers, that's another thing. I've got a lot of experience working with teenagers. It's an interesting thing to work with teens because they have so many dreams and aspirations, and yet they feel awkward and unsure of themselves. A lot of us carry that into adulthood. I love to talk about inner child work. Oh gosh, it's so much fun to be an adult and do something that's very childish. Like right now, I don't have any shoes on. And it's just a really cool thing not to have shoes on. When you're a kid, you don't want to wear shoes. And now you wait until it rains and you go stick your toes in the mud. That's nurturing your inner child. I love that concept. Playing with crayons or playing dominoes. I love Chinese checkers. Oh God, they're so much fun. I really love Chinese checkers. I also can help with people wanting to know what kind of ways they can cut their grocery bills, or what kind of ways they can cut their clothing bills. And the funny thing about it is, the more and more I think about survival, I think about that when something is sustainable, like my yarn. My yarn comes from sheep or bamboo or trees, linen, whatever. But each of it comes from something that is sustainable. It can reproduce. If you have a female sheep and a male sheep, you can make more sheep, and then you can make more yarn. Well, it's kind of the same way when we're thinking about how to take care of ourselves. When we figure out something that's sustainable. For example, when I was a kid, I don't remember anybody who didn't have green beans in the backyard. I mean, everybody grew green beans. Yards were bigger then. They weren't all the zoning and planning things where you couldn't have a chicken wire fence, or you couldn't have an area of a garden, or whatever. Anyway, they're like that. They come down on you. Everybody had green beans, and so kids always had green beans. In fact, I can remember several years in school where for the lunches, every single lunch, we had green beans because they were supposed to be really healthy, and so everybody ate them, and it extended our budget. One of the other things that is so important about budgeting is that things like salad dressing or any kind of sauces, those are simple to make. Cooking, I love cooking. I adore cooking. I've been cooking, well, anybody that works in a restaurant for 23 years must know something about cooking, because depending on the size of restaurant you work in, you oftentimes have to jump in and do something else for somebody else because somebody didn't show up to work. I also have a bachelor's and a master's degree in business systems management. Business systems management is a good thing to know when you run a nonprofit. I've been running a nonprofit for 34 years, done a lot of work with helping build a children's community center that now is a huge, huge thing. It's just expanded like crazy. More and more volunteers have come in, and it's in central Mexico, Guanajuato. I started that. My husband and I built the first building there, and had first three floors, I guess it was. We never finished the third floor, but the whole planning and the whole exciting thing, and now it's been going for almost 20 years. These things are just so amazing. And looking for land, I have a lot of experience with that because we've looked for land in several different areas. We owned, or our nonprofit owned 1,227 acres of desert in Arizona at one time. My husband's experience living on an island. He owns an island and had, well, off grid, of course. Now here we've got solar, and we've got backup with on grid too. And of course, I don't use a dryer or a microwave or any of those kinds of things. And each of those things, I guess it's a strange idea, and this is my idea. I haven't heard anybody else say this, but I feel like if we do something, it doesn't have to be a big thing. We do something, okay, with solar panels or drying the clothes on the line or recycling plastic or something. I keep wondering if everybody did something, could that reduce, say, the winds in a tornado or a tsunami or a hurricane by 2 miles an hour? You know, that might be a big difference between so many things being destroyed and things surviving. You know, you never know. And you know, when I think about my heritage, I think about my dad, and he left me, was yellow, but it was a piece of paper in a frame, and it was a poem, Never Quit. And I realized my dad was 5'6", Mom was 6'1", that's why he married her. Only knew her for 28 days. It wasn't married to me in heaven, I can assure you. But what he taught me was being short and being male was hard. It was really tough because people expected you to be taller and bigger and stronger and all that kind of thing. And it was really my mother who was taller. She wasn't bigger or stronger by any means, but she was taller. He taught me that the most important thing is tenacity. And I learned a lesson. My mother always said I'd never amount to a hill of beans. She didn't want me to do anything because I was a female. Females aren't worth anything. And so I finally showed her. She's been dead for years, of course, but I showed her. I graduated with my PhD in age 63. Can you imagine? Couldn't find a job, but I did graduate at age 63. And that's another reason why I'm on YouTube, is because I've always been a volunteer. And I've always used whatever I've learned to give to other people because it just makes sense to me. I think community is the relationships of any kind are the most important part of growing old. I mean that. Relationships. Whether it's a relationship with a dog who just knocked over a pot of parsley on the floor here. You want to see it? Show you. See the parsley down on the floor? He just knocked it over. Now he's going to eat it. Well, you just never know what a dog is going to do. But relationships, you can have a relationship. Now he's carried the pot over there to eat it. With a dog, with a tree, with your garden, with my crocheting. Oh, my crocheting is so important to me. It's how I express who I am. I learned to embroider when I was 3 years old. I think my mother wanted me to stick myself and die. That's what I thought about in recent years, because she really didn't want a girl. That was just the way it was. So I could talk about toxic mothers. That's something else I could talk about. And of course, recovering. One of the things you learn when you work with disabled kids is that you want them to know that they can be whatever they want to be. And it works. It honestly works. I had a little boy with Downs, and I know he could be president. Certainly better than what's going on right now. There's no question about that. He was so incredibly bright and so capable, and his mother believed he could do anything, and that's the difference. Let's come back to that word, sustainable. Sustainable is when you have a mother who loves you and cares about you and honors and respects you. And that's fortunately what my husband had. He had a mother who really, really cared about him and his sister. And the difference in how they feel about themselves, how they feel about the world, that's the part that's so frustrating to me. The man who raped me, he was a boy, and of course he was 18, I was 15. He had a fantastic sister and a loving family, but they were Army, and of course, I was Air Force kid. And you're just moving around, and you never have any long-term friendships, and you just have such a different life. His sister and I just bonded. Oh man, we just really liked each other. But my folks, they took my son because I wasn't old enough to be considered legal guardian. You had to be about 6 months older, and I wasn't. So that's the way that went. But I can talk about that. I can talk about how that feels to lose your only child, your first child, your firstborn. What it feels like to take care of animals, and birds especially. I've rescued lots of animals. Part of being a volunteer is when there's a hurricane or something like that, you rush out, you grab a few kids to take with you to give them that experience of going out and rescuing birds that are covered in oil or just wet or whatever is going on. That's part of the whole game of life. And that's the thing I've learned. If I had to say there's one thing that really matters, it's relationships. If you can think back to maybe a family member you have a horrible experience with. I met a psychologist many years ago, and she talked about chapters. She said, in our lives, we have lots of chapters, and we open them, and it's a relationship with someone else. We open the chapter, and then we get to choose. Either we die and the chapter closes, or we do something to close the chapter. And that's one of the things that's always fascinated me, because I never had siblings. That's one of the things that fascinated me about having siblings, is how so many of them don't get along, or they don't talk to each other, or they spend a lot of time apart. And I nurture my friendships. I really do. I've got old friends that have been in my life for years, and I've got new friends. And I really try hard to nurture. And I wish so badly that we nurtured our earth in the same way. I think that's part of why I crochet now. Both my hips are metal, and so walking is a kind of a tough thing. Yeah, they tell you otherwise, but trust me, walking is tough. I've got one hip that every time you step on it, you have to wonder if it's going to work or not. And when it doesn't, you hit the floor. So I've learned to adapt a lot of that. But when I make I make little jewelry pieces that they're all crocheted pins. They're jewelry pins. Because I studied gold and silver jewelry making as a young person, but the cost just became too high for the product itself. And so I decided to try making it out of something else, so that's what I do. And I make wall hangings too, and both of them are, that's artists are that way. I think they're to remind people to have a relationship with the earth, to connect with the earth. For me, living in a place like this, I've got, I suppose, about 5 acres of land that we've rented this little farmhouse. Being in that kind of a space where it's quiet and you can think, and I've got chickens who give me eggs, and I've got gardens that give me food, and I've got a helper that comes and helps me with the gardens. Actually, 2 helpers. I've got an older man who's he's not quite as old as me, but his grandson is 26, and for years they've been with us. It's a real beautiful experience to watch a plant grow, or a bird come by, or something else in nature. I've got a beautiful old tree over there, really old grandmother tree, and I call it my church. I've completely covered, it was all bare, it was just so bare. I've covered the whole bottom of it all the way around with hens and chickens. Hens and chickens is a plant it's what they call a ground cover. And it is my church. I look over there and I just can't believe how incredibly old and wise that tree is. It's a great big old mesquite. There's a small one next to it, and then there's another one around back. I call that the grandfather tree. It's leaning way over, obviously, because this is the top of the mountain, and the wind has blown it all the years. It's leaned over. But the concept of going over there and sitting, I'll have to make a video over there. I think you'd enjoy seeing the view, because over there is the very top of the mountain, and I sit in a chair. I tied it to the water tank. The water tank's on a big, tall cement post, and then the water's up there. And I can look down over the whole valley. And to me, that's spiritual development, spiritual enlightenment, spiritual exposure. I love doing that. I love having that relationship with the tree. And so many birds, you can hear one right now. I hope you hear that. I don't know if you do, but there's a bird calling right now. Lots of birds. Here in Ecuador, there's a tremendous amount of birds. One of the reasons I really have fallen deeply in love with Ecuador is because there are places like this where there are very, very few people, and most of them are subsistence farmers. As far as I know, the only factory within miles of where I am right now is what they call a panela factory. It's where they make sugar, what they call sugar, what we call sugar, white sugar, and this is a brown sugar. It's not near as sweet. They make it there, and some of them also make alcohol from the sugar. But that's the only factory I know of, and so the sky is always blue. It's really early in the morning, so right now it's a little bit of clouds, but the quiet's a really big deal. I have to say that being in the quiet is really healing. It's very healing. I feel sad for people who don't have an opportunity to have a relationship with nature in a quiet space. One of the things I did with my kids, I'd take them outside. I'd take my whole classroom outside, 32 kids, I'd take them all outside, because ADHD doesn't show up outside. Can you imagine that? Kids are much calmer. And I've heard people say, oh no, they're just distracted. No, they're not, they're calmer. That nature is not judgmental. Keep that in mind. Nature isn't judgmental. Nature is part of who we are. I mean, I take a breath because I have a tree and there's air. That's nature. I eat because it's growing behind me. I've got right here, you can probably see, can you see the banana trees? There's about 60, 70 banana trees right here. And I'm going to have a banana for breakfast. It's a nice thing. It's a good feeling to be self-sustainable. I'm not really. I mean, I have about less than a mile from here is my favorite organic farmer. He's been here. I've only been living here since March, so not quite a year. But he's been here his whole life, and he's established an incredible organic farm. This morning I'll have organic strawberries, and organic blueberries. I've got organic mango in the refrigerator, organic apples and oranges. Yeah. Having a relationship with your food is a hard thing to imagine, but we do. We have a relationship. And when our food is not processed, when it's fresh, I've even got organic cauliflower in the refrigerator, and carrots, yeah, cheese, oh God. He just gets some of the, he grows most of his food, but his coffee, I don't drink coffee, but everybody here drinks coffee because the coffee is grown right here and roasted right here. That kind of a relationship with your food is very different than having a hamburger from McDonald's. It really is. I have to say, it's pickling your own food, making your own kombucha, making your own sauerkraut. All of those things make such a big difference in your relationship with food. And that's why I'm here. I'd like to have a relationship with you. I'd like to get to know, what would you like to talk about? What problem exists in your life that I've had some experience with that I can, just leave in the comments. Tell me what you're thinking about. Tell me what you'd like me to talk about, because I don't have a lot of time, and you probably do. So let's not waste it. If I know something that you'd like to know, ask me. I'll talk to you. I talk about death with my drug and alcohol recovery people. We talk about suicide. We talk about the effects of all different drugs on them as people, emotionally and physically. We talk about how it's affected their kids. We talk about how being in jail. I used to do ministry in jail. Yeah, there are earth-centered people in jail, and there's certainly Native American people in jail, and those people resonate with me. Again, relationships. So if there's something you would like me to talk about, if there are any questions you'd like me to answer, once I turned 70, I decided it really doesn't matter what people think of me, because I'm not going to be here that much longer anyway, so I might as well just do what I want, be who I am, and for me, that's crocheting. I really, really love to crochet. It doesn't require me to be on my feet. That's the problem with cooking now. It's hard because one hip gives out. Just does. Oh, I also have scoliosis. I've had scoliosis most of my life. I could talk about that. Anyway, I've given you some ideas. I hope that you've enjoyed my channel, and I hope you come back. Thank you.